In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Would you please be seated? I'd like to preface this homily by saying that I'm very much preaching to myself here, as it were. And I say that because today's gospel reading makes me very uncomfortable. And I think that's a good thing. But it also means that my reflection on this text has rather been shaped by those things in me which it has convicted and found wanting, and which need addressing. Yet for as much as this text makes me feel a little awkward and discomforted, so too, I suspect, can the same be said for probably most people in this room. Or at the least it should do. The parable of the rich man and Lazarus is a deeply uncomfortable one, meant to get under the skin and annoy and be hard to interpret away for anyone who finds themselves in the position of being reasonably well off. Once again, I preach first to myself here. In reflecting on this text, it occurred to me that a good part of the discomfort it has prompted within me comes down to what I feel to be a certain relatability of the rich man. Now, even as I say that, a part of me wants to push back against even the thought of that. For I don't consider myself especially rich, but indeed more than that, how difficult it is to see oneself reflected in a character so unattractive, imaged in one who undoubtedly plays the role of the antagonist in this mini-drama. Yet, for as undesirable a mirror as he may hold up for me, I suspect that probably means it's a reflection of myself I need to spend some more time looking at. As many of you know, I currently live downtown Montgomery, just across the road from Dreamland Barbecue, which, as the waistband on my trousers has shown, has been a rather dangerous thing. Living where I do, it's impossible to leave my front door and go to Prevail Coffee or Lorraine's Bake Shop or Cuco's Mexican Cafe, Chris's Hot Dogs, whatever, without walking past and, indeed, sometimes literally stepping over fellow residents of the downtown area who have fallen on hard times. The same goes for my commute to and from work, when, inevitably, I'll drive past the familiar faces who wait at the interstate exits to beg for money. I confess, it is a very rare occurrence for me to stop and give anything. And not just because I'm a millennial who never carries cash. Those are awkward encounters at the best of times, and are made all the more uncomfortable when I'm wearing my collar and am choosing to visibly identify as a follower of Christ. Now, don't get me wrong. I have a well-stocked storehouse of very good excuses, ready to feed myself when faced with that situation. I'm quite good at this. What would the money be used on? I don't have time. I don't have bills small enough. I really don't want to give a 50. It's my hard-earned money, and I'm really trying to save up for whatever. There are so many jobs going in Montgomery. Why can't he get one? Plentiful are my rationales, and easy my self-justification. How sweet to be able to cleanse the conscience in the blink of an eye, and with a gaze turned conveniently the other way. I suspect it is with exactly this pattern, with no intention of doing wrong, and with well thought out grounds for his action, that the rich man of today's story ended up where he did. How easy to demonize this character of the rich man and assume a backstory full of villainous cruelty and intentional exploitation. How easy in doing that to thus distance myself from him. I believe instead that a far more likely explanation for how this relational dynamic between the rich man and Lazarus developed, for surely it did not materialize overnight, is that it emerged out of a way of his being in the world, not too different to how mine often looks. That scares me, and it should. How much more likely that, like most reasonably affluent people, the rich man in the parable worked really hard to get where he was. Surely he must have striven and been competitive in his field, whatever that may have been, putting in the hours, working overtime, putting in the hard yards, rising above his compeers to reach that place of wealth and affluence. He must have thought, indeed he must have known, that because of all that effort, because of what he'd done, he deserved all that he had. You can imagine him being told that growing up. Work hard, prove yourself a cut above the rest, strive for that higher place, and then you'll be comfortable with a good house, a steady job, a good education, able to enjoy life. What the rich man had, he surely understood, was his, and of his own making, and for his own use. Right? For indeed, how often that is exactly what I tell myself. Lazarus, in contrast, one can almost hear the rich man saying, must surely not have worked hard enough. He must have been a slacker. He must not have applied himself properly, because if he did all those things, then surely he would not be here on my doorstep. If he'd just pull himself up by his bootstraps and put the effort in, surely he'd be all right. How convicting to say that out loud, for how often I have thought the same. My brothers and sisters, I suggest that it is with precisely this attitude, precisely this set of lies, that the rich man in the parable developed the ability to not see Lazarus. For it is impossible that he truly did not know of his existence. Lazarus lay, the text says, at the gate, at the entrance to the man's property. He would have walked right past or even stepped over the poor man every time he left his house. Indeed, at his death, he calls out to Abraham and names his companion. He knew full well who Lazarus was. Now, at this point, I think we have two options of how to read his character. We could say that this rich man is a straightforward villain through and through, an evil man who delighted in ignoring the plight of his neighbor. Yet how often is it, really, that the Lord gives us so black and white a character in his stories? I propose that instead we read him in another light, a far more unsettling one, at least for me. Because to see that rich man as a reasonably well-meaning, reasonably well-to-do, reasonably normal person, whose attitude towards his work, his property, his gifts, has blinded him to the wretched man before him. To see him like that is to see myself as an all too frequent partner in his crime. In the rich man, one finds perhaps a deeply relatable person who, we must imagine, had his heart and mind fixed on that even more relatable pursuit of more, in the fullest sense of the word. One can imagine that this man strove for more in his work life, a better title, a better position, the next promotion, which would lead to more in his possessions, a larger bank balance, a bigger house, nicer food and clothes and transportation, which in turn would lead to more in his personal life, fewer obligations, more freedom, less constraints on his time, and all born of a growth in seniority and affluence. These are things, he was surely told, which are good and right to be chased after, oriented towards, elevated as markers of success by which self-worth and self-identity are determined. In this pursuit for himself of the ever better life, total liberty, and personal happiness, in this attitude that the social and economic ladder may be straightforwardly ascended by working hard and setting one's sights ever on the next thing, the rich man became what St. Augustine calls incurvatus in se, curved in on himself, spiritually doubled over in a perpetual exercise of navel gazing. So positioned, and with all the rationale in the world, the rich man chose blindness to the one who did not fit into the ego drama he had constructed. And the parable shows us what happened because of this. In a reversal of expectations, it is this man, and not Lazarus, who is held up as the outcast, isolated by his own doing. Note that he alone is never named, for even his name has been subsumed by his pursuits. And whether he realized it or not, his torment began surely during his life. Locked into the narrow world of his own ego, his is a suffering born of a self-imposed isolation. To everything that is not him, to every threat to his image of himself as the main character, he chose to be blind. In today's first reading from the prophet Amos, we encounter, I think, a beautifully succinct description of what's going on here. The translation before us in the service leaflet perhaps belies the punchiness of verse 5 of that passage, where the prophet declares, "Woe to those who, improvising on the harp, devise their own accompaniment." Woe to those, Amos is saying, who would divorce the narrative of their lives, the melody, we might say, from the context, the accompaniment within which the Lord has placed it. In the rich man, we see one who saw the accompaniment he had been given in Lazarus, the counter melody to his ego drama, and chose not to write in harmony with it, but blindly to neglect it and devise an accompaniment of his own. At the heart of the rich man's blindness and spiritual self-absorption was his choice to accept the lies he had told himself and likely heard from others, about the nature of all that he had. For him, everything he possessed, property, money, an affluent lifestyle, even his skill set and talents, was fully his, earned, deserved, at his free disposal. The problem is that this attitude stands in total contrast to the foundational insight of Christian social teaching, in which we say that God, as the Lord of creation, is ultimately the owner of all things. That nothing finally belongs to any of us. That we don't control what we have, God does. That what we have is not our possession finally, it's God's. We are indeed, the scriptures make clear, to be stewards of creation. But if stewards, then those who have the obligation to cooperate with God's intention for it. Whatever we have, not only material possessions, but gifts and talents also, whatever capacity for hard work, whatever intelligence or creativity, all is a gift from God. That game of I've got it because I've earned it doesn't feature in the worldview to which the Christian is called. Whatever I have is a gift from God, which I am called to steward for his purpose. None of it, material or otherwise, ultimately belongs to me to be used as I would use it. Because of this, I think the question must be asked, why has God permitted me to have what I have, whether possessions or gifts? My whole financial and personal life takes a completely different turn when viewed through this lens. Why has God permitted me to have whatever wealth or gifts I may have? For what purpose would he have me use it? To grasp this and truly ask this question is to get to the heart of the relationship we have with God as simply a part of his creation. To call him Lord is equally to say something really important about who I am and where I stand in that relationship. The downfall of the rich man lay in his choice to disregard this and opt to live instead by the terms of his own ego drama. Having fixed on that lens by which he viewed the world, a lens through which to see himself as ever the main character, the rich man saw what he had as that over which he could claim mastery, control, and right. Born of a pursuit of those things which surely from a young age he had been told were the markers of personal success and worthy goals, he convinced himself that what he had earned, and what he earned was his, and what was his was to be used at his discretion and for the purpose he deemed fit. With himself so placed at his center, spiritually bent double, incurvatus in se, in that perpetual performance of navel-gazing, the rich man learned quickly and masterfully the art of blindness. In all this, my question to myself is, to whom have I chosen to be blind? About whom have I learned the art of looking away? Why has God permitted me to have what I have? How would he have me use it? Several decades ago, in an address given to a gathering of donors to the diocese, the then Archbishop of Chicago, spoke a little on this passage and gave a rather haunting conclusion. He said to them, "The poor need you, the rich, in order to help them out of their poverty. You, the rich, in turn, likewise need the poor in order to keep you from hell." What do we do with what the Lord has given us? For indeed, it is not ultimately mine. To whom have I turned a blind eye?